Saudi's Stories channel warmly welcomes you. Do not forget to subscribe and like the video. The Knights Templar, also known as the Poor Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, were among the most formidable military organizations adhering to Latin Catholic Christian thought. They were celebrated for their affluence and influence and stood as prominent representatives of Christian economics, maintaining their activities for nearly 2 centuries during the Middle Ages. The organization gained notoriety in the Christian world following its official endorsement by the Catholic Church around the year 1129, quickly expanding in influence, power, and membership. The Knights, distinguished by their unique white attire emblazoned with a red cross, proved to be among the most skilled and formidable military units involved in the Crusades. Members of the organization also established a vast economic infrastructure throughout the Christian territories, credited with pioneering several financial methods that would later serve as the foundation for the modern banking system. They constructed fortresses and established strongholds across Europe and the Holy Land. The fate of the Knights Templar was closely intertwined with the Crusades, and as these campaigns met with defeat in Jerusalem, the organization experienced a significant loss of support. Rumors began to circulate regarding secret meetings and rituals, which aroused suspicion against them. King Philip IV of France seized this opportunity, burdened by debts to the order. Consequently, on October 13, 1307, many members were arrested in France and, under torture, coerced into fabricating confessions, ultimately resulting in executions via burning at the stake. Pope Clement V, yielding to King Philip's pressure, formally dissolved the order in 1312. This series of events led to the sudden disappearance of a significant segment of European society, spawning widespread speculation and legends about the nature and essence of the organization, ensuring the name of the Knights Templar endured to this day. Let us now delve into the history of the organization. After the First Crusade captured Jerusalem in 1099, Christian pilgrims flocked to the Holy Land. While the Crusaders firmly established control in Jerusalem, the situation in other occupied territories and lands beyond the seas was perilous, rife with bandits who ruthlessly slaughtered pilgrims en masse, particularly during their passage through Jaffa towards the Holy Land. In light of this, in 1120, the French knight Hugh de Payens made a proposition to King Baldwin II of the Kingdom of Jerusalem and the Patriarch of Jerusalem, suggesting the establishment of a monastic order dedicated to the protection of Christian pilgrims. The two men agreed to this proposal during the Council of Nablus in January 1120, with the king assigning the knights a residence within a wing of the royal palace on the Temple Mount of the occupied Al-Aqsa Mosque, a site of great sanctity said to rest on the ruins of Solomon's Temple. As the Crusaders habitually referred to Al-Aqsa Mosque as Solomon's Temple, the organization adopted the titles Poor Soldiers of Christ and Temple of Solomon, ultimately earning the designation Knights Templar. Initially, the organization began with 9 knights, including Godfrey de Saint-Omer and André de Montbard, and suffered from a lack of financial support, relying on donations that inspired their emblem, the image of 2 knights riding a single horse, as a symbol of their modest circumstances. However, the Templars' financial situation did not remain dire for long, as they gained a prominent advocate within the church in the figure of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the church's leading representatives and the nephew of Knight André de Montbard. Bernard zealously supported the order, authoring a text entitled In Praise of the New Knighthood, and leading a delegation of churchmen to officially endorse the organization during the Council of Trent in 1129. From that point, the order became a beacon of charitable works in the Christian world, receiving substantial gifts of money, land, and contributions from noble families eager to partake in the defense of the Holy Land. In 1139, the Templars were granted a significant privilege when Pope Innocent II issued a papal bull known as the Complete Gift, which exempted them from local laws and granted them the right to traverse all borders freely. Furthermore, they were absolved from taxes and were beholden only to the Pope. With this clear vision and ample resources, the organization began to flourish and expand, becoming the primary striking force in major crusade battles. Heavily armored knights on their war steeds played a pivotal role in charging the enemy lines to destabilize opposing forces. Significantly, one of the Knights Templars' most remarkable victories occurred at the Battle of Ramla, where approximately 500 Templars significantly bolstered the Crusader army of a few thousand and succeeded in defeating Saladin's forces, which numbered around 26,000. It is noteworthy that despite the organization's military orientation, the majority of its members were civilians. They supported the organization by overseeing its economic structure, amassing wealth far surpassing the direct donations they received, even as they vowed to uphold their vow of poverty. Noblemen eager to participate in the Crusades often entrusted their financial assets to the Templars, meanwhile. Consequently, The Templars acquired vast wealth from across the Christian world and beyond the seas. In 1150, the order began issuing financial letters of credit for pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. This system of letters of credit relied on the principle of trust, where a pilgrim would leave their valuable possessions or money with a Templar official before embarking on their journey, receiving instead a document denoting the value of what they had deposited. This document could be presented in the Holy Land, allowing the pilgrim to reclaim an equivalent amount. This innovation can be seen as the precursor to the modern banking system and the first formal financial system to rely on the use of letters of credit. This system effectively safeguarded the pilgrims from theft, deterring bandits and robbers, while simultaneously enriching the Templars' financial coffers. This combination of donations and financial transactions ultimately enabled the Knights Templar to control an extraordinarily powerful and extensive economic network throughout the Christian world, amassing significant wealth, vast tracts of land in Europe and the Middle East, as well as farms and vineyards. They constructed churches, castles, and fortifications, engaged in industry, and oversaw import and export, even establishing their own naval fleet. At one point, the island of Cyprus completely fell under their control. Consequently, some scholars consider the Knights Templar as the world's first multinational corporation. Decline and fall. The tide began to turn against the Knights Templar in the mid-12th century, as the Islamic world unified under formidable leaders such as Saladin, amid growing divisions among Christian sects over the Holy Land. For years, animosity simmered between the Templars and other Christian military orders, such as the Hospitallers and the Teutonic Knights, which deeply undermined the Christian position politically and militarily. Moreover, the Templars suffered defeats in various battles, culminating in Saladin's recapture of Jerusalem in 1187 at the decisive Battle of Hattin. Shortly thereafter, the Crusaders reclaimed the city in 1229 without the Templars' assistance, and it wasn't long before the Khwarezmians took Jerusalem again in 1244, which remained under Muslim control until British forces wrested it from the Ottomans in 1917. The Templars were compelled to relocate their headquarters to other northern cities, choosing the coastal town of Acre, where they remained for nearly a century until losing it in 1291. They faced successive losses of remaining strongholds, such as Tortosa and Atlit. Subsequently, they moved their base to Limassol in Cyprus and attempted to maintain a garrison on the island of Arwad near the coast of Tortosa. In 1300, they sought a military alliance with the Mongols to establish a new expeditionary force at Arwad. However, they suffered defeat at the hands of the Mamluks in the siege of Arwad, losing the city. This defeat left the Knights Templar without a foothold in the Holy Land. Support for the Knights Templar began to wane as their military role diminished. However, it was not an easy transition. The Templars had ingrained themselves as an integral part of daily life in the Christian world for 2 centuries, with their buildings and institutions proliferating across every inch of Europe. The organization maintained a substantial local presence, with its members actively engaging in various enterprises and managing the affairs of many individuals. Europeans continued their daily interactions with the organization, as some worked in farms or vineyards owned by its members, while others benefited from its banking services for safeguarding their savings and valuable possessions. The Knights Templar retained their legal privileges, exempting them from local laws, which effectively rendered them a kind of state within a state wherever they established themselves. Even after their military wing lost its martial vision, they maintained the right to cross borders freely. This situation cultivated resentment among many European nobles, particularly as they discerned the Templars' intentions to establish a religious state similar to those founded by the Teutonic Knights in Prussia or the Hospitallers in Rhodes. Persecution, arrests, and dissolution of the organization. In 1305, Pope Clement V, from his residence in France, reached out to Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and Volk de Villeret, the Grand Master of the Hospitallers, to discuss the possibility of merging the two orders. Neither expressed enthusiasm for the idea, yet the Pope persisted in his initiative. In 1306, he invited both leaders to France for further discussions. De Molay arrived first early in 1307, while Villeret's arrival was delayed by several months. During this time, Clement and de Molay discussed criminal matters involving a former Grand Master of the Templars, which had concerned the King of France and his advisors. Ultimately, they reached a general consensus that the allegations were unfounded. Nevertheless, Pope Clement sent a request to King Philip IV of France for assistance in investigating the matter. Some historians suggest that King Philip, heavily indebted to the order due to their assistance in his war against the English, sought to exploit the prevailing rumors to his advantage and began pressuring the Church to take action against the organization as a means of escaping his debts. Recent studies indicate that political and religious motives underpinned the actions of the French king. It appeared that the Capetians sought to preserve their governance, grounded in a sanctity derived from the papal authority, especially as discussions of Templar heresy arose. The matter of Solomon's Temple represented the final step in the Church's plan to seize the foundations of power, a strategy that initiated with the separation of the papacy from the French monarchy during Pope Boniface VIII's reign. The Capetian kings showcased themselves as unyielding defenders of Catholic doctrine, possessing quasi-divine royal rights positioning them as superior to the Pope. This power struggle loomed large over the impending trial of the Knights Templar. On Friday, October 13, 1307, a date that would later be mistakenly associated with the superstition of Friday the 13th, King Philip IV commanded the arrest of Jacques de Molay and dozens of fellow Templar members in France. The arrest warrant proclaimed, "God is displeased with us, our land harbors enemies of the faith." The Templars were convicted of numerous charges, including heresy, idol worship, and engaging in sexual vices during their rites, along with financial corruption, fraud, and treason. Under duress, many of the accused confessed to these crimes, igniting a scandal in Paris despite the confessions being extracted through torture. All the interrogations were documented on a 30-meter length of parchment, currently housed in the National Archives in Paris. The detainees were forced to admit to spitting on the cross. One such confession read, "I, Raymond de Laver, age 21, confess that I spat on the cross 3 times, from my mouth and not from my heart," substantiating the heresy claims against the Templars. Pope Clement acquiesced to King Philip's demands and issued a papal bull on November 22, 1307, urging all Christian monarchs to arrest the Templars and seize their property. He convened hearings to examine the Templar condemnations. However, when inquisitors loosened their grip on the detainees, many recanted their prior confessions. Only those with some legal knowledge were able to defend themselves in court, yet King Philip obstructed these efforts in 1310 when he utilized their previously coerced confessions to condemn dozens of Templar members to be burned alive in Paris. Under King Philip's threat to employ military force against the Pope unless he complied, Clement V ultimately consented to dissolve the order, thus endorsing the rumors and chaos stemming from the confessions. At the Council of Vienne in 1312, several papal decrees were issued, including one that officially dissolved the order and another that transferred the majority of Templar assets to the Hospitallers. As for the leaders, Grand Master Jacques de Molay, despite his advanced age, recanted his coerced confessions, as did Geoffroy de Charny, the order's commander and mentor in Normandy, both insisting on their innocence. They were convicted of heresy and apostasy, leading to their execution by burning on March 18, 1314. Legend has it that de Molay stood firm until the end, requesting to be tied facing the Notre Dame Cathedral to raise his hands in prayer. Allegedly, he proclaimed from the flames that he would soon confront King Philip and Pope Clement before God. His final words were recorded on parchment, "God knows the sinners and transgressors, and calamities will soon befall those who condemned us to death." Indeed, scarcely a month later, Pope Clement perished, and King Philip met his end while hunting before the year was over. Under King Philip's threat to employ military force against the Pope unless he complied, Clement V ultimately consented to dissolve the order, thus endorsing the rumors and chaos stemming from the confessions. At the Council of Vienne in 1312, several papal decrees were issued, including one that officially dissolved the order and another that transferred the majority of Templar assets to the Hospitallers. As for the leaders, Grand Master Jacques de Molay, despite his advanced age, recanted his coerced confessions, as did Geoffroy de Charny, the order's commander and mentor in Normandy, both insisting on their innocence. They were convicted of heresy and apostasy, leading to their execution by burning on March 18, 1314. Legend has it that de Molay stood firm until the end, requesting to be tied facing the Notre Dame Cathedral to raise his hands in prayer. Allegedly, he proclaimed from the flames that he would soon confront King Philip and Pope Clement before God. His final words were recorded on parchment, "God knows the sinners and transgressors, and calamities will soon befall those who condemned us to death." Indeed, scarcely a month later, Pope Clement perished, and King Philip met his end while hunting before the year was over. The current position of the Roman Catholic Church is summarized in their assertion that the trial of the order was unjust and illegal, that there was no evidence against the organization or its leaders, and that Pope Clement acted under the pressures of public scandal and the overwhelming influence of King Philip IV, revealing the fact that Philip was, in truth, a relative of Pope Clement. Internal organization. The Knights Templar was established as a monastic order, akin to Bernard of Clairvaux's organization, and was considered the first influential international organization in Europe. It was characterized by a strong organizational structure, particularly in its leadership hierarchy. In countries where the order had a prominent presence, such as France, England, Poitou, Apulia, Aragon, Tripoli, Antioch, Anjou, Portugal, Jerusalem, Hungary, and Croatia, each had a Grand Master overseeing the Templar members therein. All leaders owed allegiance to the Grand Master of the order, who held the position for life. The Grand Master's responsibilities included overseeing military activities in the East and managing financial and economic operations in the West. The Grand Master exerted authority through the organization's emissaries, a group of knights appointed by himself in consultation with the order's headquarters in Jerusalem, tasked with visiting different regions, rectifying various forms of corruption, proposing new laws and judgments, and mediating significant disputes. The emissaries possessed the power to relieve knights of their duties and to dismiss the Grand Master of the relevant province. The exact number of members. Ranks and degrees. Basic ranks. The Knights Templar comprise three fundamental ranks: the noble knights, the non-noble sergeants, and the priests. Members of these three ranks adorned themselves in garments displaying the Red Cross emblem. Noble Knights. The noble knights are regarded as the highest order within the Templars. There were no formal ceremonies for their induction. Any knight wishing to join must already be a knight in their own right. The noble knights represented the most significant and prominent faction within the organization, donning white cloaks symbolizing purity and chastity. They were equipped with heavy armor and weapons, and among every 8 knights, one would assume the role of leader. Additionally, among every 3 or 4 knights, there would be 1 or 2 attendants, novice knights. The attendants were generally not full members of the order but were enlisted temporarily in place of outsiders until they were promoted to the rank of knight. Non-noble sergeants. Beneath the noble knights, there existed sergeants, comprised of individuals from non-noble families. They were characterized by vital skills and mastery of trades such as blacksmithing and construction, managing many activities across Europe. In the Crusader states, they fought alongside the knights but utilized lighter armor and rode single horses. Some sergeants were able to attain high ranks, including. Beneath the noble knights, there existed sergeants, comprised of individuals from non-noble families. They were characterized by vital skills and mastery of trades such as blacksmithing and construction, managing many activities across Europe. In the Crusader states, they fought alongside the knights but utilized lighter armor and rode single horses. Some sergeants were able to attain high ranks, including the position of treasury chief in Acre, who effectively led the Templar fleet. The attire of the sergeants in black or brown. Priests. In 1139, a class of clergy was established, forming the third rank within the organization and referred to as priests. Priests were ordained through special ceremonies, with the highest among them being the high priest. Their duty was to provide the religious or spiritual needs of the Knights Templar, and they did not partake in any combat activities. Higher ranks. The higher ranks, known as the Grand Masters, were established in 1118 to 1119 by Hugh de Payron, who became the first leader of the order, bearing the title of Grand Master, an office held for life. To ensure the order's survival and continuity, all but 2 of the Grand Masters were permitted to participate in battles, remaining at the organization's headquarters to prevent the total loss of leadership during combat. For instance, during the siege of Ascalon in 1153, Grand Master Bernard de Tremilio led a contingent of knights in breaching the city's walls. However, as the remainder of the Crusader army failed to follow, this group, including their leader, was besieged and annihilated. Similarly, Grand Master Gerard de Rodefort was executed by Saladin after being captured during the siege of Acre in 1189, due to his treachery and breach of trust. The Grand Master oversaw operations across various ranks, including military campaigns in the Holy Land and financial dealings in Western Europe. Some Grand Masters took on roles as battlefield leaders, albeit this practice often led to significant blunders, as evidenced by de Rodefort's command contributing to the Crusaders' defeat at the Battle of Hattin. Jacques de Molay is regarded as the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, executed by burning in Paris in 1314 by order of King Philip IV of France. Accusations. The Knights Templar were accused of worshipping the idol Baphomet and engaging in homosexual acts, as well as spitting and urinating on the cross and committing sodomy. When King Philip IV of France suppressed the medieval order on Friday, the 13th of October, 1307, he simultaneously imprisoned many French Templars and tortured them until they confessed. The name Baphomet emerged in the investigation documents regarding the Knights beginning in 1307. The term did not gain prominence in English discourse until the 19th century amid discussions about why the Templars were suppressed. The name Baphomet first appeared in a letter from the Crusader Anselm of Ribeaumont in July 1098, stating that on the following day, when dawn broke, they called for Baphomet loudly, imploring their lord in their hearts as they attacked and drove everyone from the city's walls. In the ensuing dawn, they cried out for Baphomet and silently prayed to God in their hearts before launching their assault. Raymond of Aguilars, a historian of the First Crusade, recounted that wandering minstrels referred to the Prophet Muhammad as Baphomet. Contemporary scholars generally agree that the name Baphomet was an Old French distortion of Muhammad, with mosques referred to as Baphumeries. Medieval Christians believed Muslims were pagans who worshipped Muhammad as a deity. Consequently, Muhammad became Mammon in English, suggesting a false idol. The name further appeared around 1195 in the Occitan poems by the wandering poet Geoffrey Rudel, who titled it Senners, per los nostres peccats. By around 1250, the name appeared in a poem lamenting the defeat of the Seventh Crusade written by Astorg d'Aurillac. De Baphomet is also the name of one surviving chapter in the Occitan translation of the earliest works by Ramon Llull, titled Libre de la Doctrina Puerile. Freemasonry and the Knights Templar. Since the late 18th century, the Freemasonic movement has incorporated many of the Templar rituals into several Masonic bodies, most notably the Temple Order, which officially merged into the union of religious, military, and Masonic organizations of the Temple and of St. John in Jerusalem, Palestine, Rhodes, and Malta, commonly referred to as the Knights Templar. One theory concerning the origin of Freemasonry claims a direct lineage from the historical Knights Templar, through members who fled to Scotland during the 14th century under King Robert Bruce, who had been cast out by the Roman Catholic Church at that time. Others who escaped to Portugal changed their name to the Knights of Christ, while additional members joined the Order of St. John. Some theories propose that the Templar factions that fled to Scotland were instrumental in securing Scottish victory at Bannockburn, but this notion has been dismissed by both Masonic leaders and historians due to insufficient evidence supporting it. The emergence of Freemasonry initially encountered fierce opposition from the Roman Catholic Church, as it deemed the group a secret society that harbored a hidden agenda conflicting with the Church and its doctrines. Over time, however, some church members transitioned into the organization. By the early 20th century, expelling Freemasons became common, leading to a misconception that the Church opposed the Knights Templar as well. However, the Church sought to draw a distinction between the Templars and the general religious orders and secret societies. In 1980, Pope John Paul II lifted the excommunication imposed on Catholics involved in Freemasonry, whereas his predecessors had been staunch opponents, warning that individuals involved in this secret society risked their souls. Legends and relics. Although this group was entirely eradicated with the execution of its members, including Jacques de Molay, the legends surrounding them persist, particularly regarding their rumored vast treasure, believed by some to be hidden within Rosslyn Chapel. The name of the Knights Templar became synonymous with myths due to the mysteries attributed to them since ancient times. Rumors proliferated even during the time of the Templars themselves, including a narrative where Jacques de Molay, the last leader of the order before his demise, allegedly warned Pope Clement V of a curse for his failure to protect the order, proclaiming that he would meet the Pope in the afterlife to judge him for his transgressions against the Templar. He also told King Philip that they would soon meet before God to account for their wrongdoings against the organization. Interestingly, both curses seemingly came to fruition in 1314, the year of de Molay's execution, as the Pope died a month later, and King Philip met his end just 7 months after. Masonic writers added their own speculations in the 19th century, inventing numerous fantastical narratives regarding them that surfaced in global literature, such as Ivanhoe, Foucault's Pendulum, The Lost Symbol, and The Da Vinci Code, as well as in modern films like National Treasure and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, alongside video games like Assassin's Creed and Broken Sword. Numerous legends surrounding the Knights Templar stem from associations with groups situated on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, including claims that Templar artifacts were discovered there, such as the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. Their possession of these relics was considered certain, as many churches continue to exhibit sacred items such as a saint's bones, fragments of garments worn by saints, and the skull of a martyr. Some documents indicated the existence of pieces of the original Cross of Christ, and many artifacts were held by the Bishop of Acre, but following the loss to Saladin's forces at the Battle of Hattin, these artifacts fell into his possession. Records suggest that Saladin ultimately returned them to redeem captive Muslims during the Siege of Acre in 1191 AD. The Templars were also said to have claimed the relics of Saint Euphemia of Chalcedon. These artifacts were the subject of investigations conducted during the Inquisition, with trial documents indicating the presence of idols worshipped by some members, and they reference deities such as cats or severed heads or something called Baphomet. The existence of such items fueled modern misconceptions that certain Templars practiced sorcery, though contemporary researchers have explained that the name Baphomet mentioned in the trial documents was merely a mispronunciation of Muhammad in French. The Holy Grail soon became linked to the Templar order, as the first mention of a Roman cup purportedly appeared around the 12th century, presented by the Count of Anjou, and was noted in a text written in 1180 by Chrétien de Troyes, hailing from the same region where the Council of Troyes officially established the Knights Templar. 20 years later, the version by Wolfram von Eschenbach became foundational, hinting at knights referred to as Tempelisen, meaning guardians of the Holy Grail. Most scholars agree that the Grail story is purely fictional and emerged during the medieval literary imagination. Another legendary item thought to possibly belong to the Knights Templar is the Shroud of Turin. Its first public exhibition occurred in 1357, presented by the widow of a nobleman known as Geoffroy de Charny, some sources describe as a member of the family of Geoffroy de Charny, who was executed alongside de Molay. While the authenticity of the shroud remains a topic of debate, carbon dating conducted in 1988 indicated its origins date between 1260 and 1390, a period encompassing the Templars' active existence for half a century. The reliability of the dating methodology has since been contested, but the shroud's age continues to be a considerable point of contention. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video.